you, Mary. Today's sermon by Andy Feigin is titled, "Is Something Missing? Our Congregation's Answers." Andy Feigin joined the UUCC in 2012. At that time, he and his wife, Mimi, were living bicoastally between Cambria and Huntington, New York. And by joining the UUCC, Andy became bi-congregational as well, since he was already a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Huntington. Having moved here full-time this past June, Andy has achieved monogamy at the UUCC. Well, we were going to call the officials eventually. But it was through his experiences of life, some of the time with our lay-led congregation here in Cambria, and some of the time with the minister-led congregation in Huntington, that Andy began to ponder many of the issues he has been sharing with us from this pulpit. Andy.
Thank you, Randy. So this has been quite a process, and many of you have given your time along the way. I thank you for that. Yesterday morning's rehearsal for today's service, with Randy as worship associate, Treva on PowerPoint, Susan, our Zoom host, Mary and Jan for the music. We figured out logistics, we strategized, we shared skills and laughed along the way. It's great working on projects with folks from this congregation, and I highly recommend it to everyone. Since I last spoke with you 3 weeks ago on April 26th, and I'll review that talk briefly in a moment, something excellent happened. Randy alluded to it. In response to my invitation, 5 small groups of UUCC members, ranging in size from 4 to 9, 27 members in total, got together to discuss the topic of that April 26th talk. And those discussions were really good. Caring, intelligent, heartfelt, sincere, respectful. Participants connected, brainstormed, and cooperated in the course of those sessions. And they came up with a lot of great ideas while sharing their honest feelings about their personal spiritual paths. The groups were formed randomly, simply based on individuals' availability, but in spite of that, the talks felt intimate. Like today's service, they were all done via Zoom, with groups small enough in size so that their faces easily fit onto one screen. Truth be told, this medium is really excellent for that type of gathering. It was a chance to be together during this time of sheltering at home and social distancing. There's a joy and there's a drama in exploring aspects of our faith. We experienced that in these meetings. I want to thank Randy for being our scribe. He took copious notes during all but one meeting when he got to participate as a member. And as he said, my wife Mimi volunteered to scribe for that one. So special thanks to Randy and Mimi. Personally, my love of this congregation was once again renewed in the process of hearing from many of you. We are all so fortunate to be surrounded by each other's loving, caring, and passionate devotion to Unitarian Universalism and to the UU community of Cambria. Back on April 26th, I gave a talk titled, "A Lay-Led Congregation, Is Something Missing?" I told you about a proposal I made to our Board of Trustees regarding the formation of a committee on ministry. I felt that as a lay-led congregation, we might benefit from some sort of spiritual leadership, guidance, direction. I talked about the meaning of ministry and how we already have many ministries in our congregation, but that we sometimes seem to lack a unified purpose and direction. I asked us to think about what we may be lacking, given that we are lay-led, all volunteer, without professionally trained spiritual leadership. So, following that talk, we met and discussed the topic. First of all, we gathered some simple data. Before asking the first 3 questions, I reminded the groups that even though they referred to minister, changing from lay-led to minister-led was not in the cards for the UUCC. We're just gathering data. So we began, and let me share my screen. We began with the first question. One more adjustment. I don't want to look at myself. Have you ever been a member of a religious organization led by a religious or professional, a minister, a priest, a rabbi? On a scale, so the responses were, yes, 23 folks, 85% of those surveyed. No, 4, 15%. So the vast majority in their lifetimes have belonged to an organization led by a minister of some kind. How much do you feel the need for a minister in your life now, in your life at this time? Randy put together a chart that looks like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you feel the need for a minister? 8 of us said not at all, 0. And you can see the range going up to a 7 out of 10. That was the most anyone felt for the need to have a minister in their lives, but there were quite a few of those. We are scattered across the spectrum, with not at all being the majority or the most chosen selection. Then I asked, in the past 5 years, have you consulted with a religious professional for personal reasons? 11 said yes, that's 41%, and 16 said no, 59%. So we have a majority who have not consulted, but not a huge majority, 41%, a significant minority. Getting back to how much do you feel the need for a minister in your life? Of those who had never had a minister in their lives, they answered, 4 of them answered 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 3, and 5 out of 10. Of those who had had ministers in their lives prior to the UUCC, 6 of them, as I said, answered that they had no desire, 6 of those. And you can see it scale up to that high 7. So 6% of those who had had a minister in the past had no desire for one now. 24%. 40% kind of had a middle range of 1 to 3.5. And then 36% had a significant feeling of the need for a minister in their lives.
Direct positive correlation.
Slide 11, for the 23 members who have consulted with a religious professional in the past 5 years, I'm sorry, of the 4 who have, 4 members who have never had a minister, 0 have consulted. And then 23 of the members who have had a minister in the past, 11 have consulted with a professional in the last 5 years, 12 have not consulted. So in the past 5 years, have you consulted with a religious professional for personal reasons? Just to review, 11 said yes, 41%, 16 said no, 59%. If we look at this in a different way, I had fun with my graphs here. The red folks are those who have consulted. The red bars represent folks who have consulted. The blue bars represent folks who have not consulted but had a minister in their past. So you'll see the ones who consulted, I got that opposite. The red bars represent people who have had minister. No, let's get this right. Sorry. Looking at it in 2 different ways, of those who consulted represented by the red columns, logically, most of them rated higher on wanting a minister in their lives. That's the point. But there were few outliers down there at 2.5% desire to have a minister in their life, but they have consulted. And in reverse, those who did not want to minister or a religious professional in their lives were less likely to consult with one in the past 5 years. Finally, for just having fun, I created a word cloud out of the copious notes that Randy wrote up. And I'll give you a moment just to look at the most common words that came up, the words that came up most frequently. Ministry and minister are had the most presence. Sort of in the mid-range, spiritual and committee and community got frequently referenced. And then just to do another word cloud for fun, this one's prettier with all the words that were spoken and how frequently they were spoken. The bigger they are, the more they were spoken. So that's it for the data. Now for some thoughts and feelings that were expressed, with the caveat that in total, we met for over 5 hours of discussion, and I'm condensing this down into about 15 minutes. To start off the discussions, I asked everyone to describe what ministry with a lowercase m means to them. Many folks chose to speak about how they feel about ministers they have known, and that was fine, but I did try to steer the conversation to talk about ministry in the broader sense of the word. The topics of help and service came up frequently within the discussion of ministry. Ministry is a lot about helping each other, being of service to each other and to our community, being in service as a way of life. Committees were frequently seen as ministries, given all the work they do to give our UU life meaning and structure. Our worship committee, our board of trustees, social justice, the ad hoc We Care committee, and on and on. Small groups such as the women's and men's groups and the occasional childless circle were also identified frequently as ministries. A strong desire was expressed for everyone to have and feel a social as well as spiritual connection through our ministries. In addition, ministry should lead us to an expanded awareness and understanding of UUism. For those with experience at having an actual minister in the past, they cited many of the benefits that having a minister can bring. Help for a family of a severely ill and needy congregant. Ministers can provide formal organization and structure, especially in a UU congregation where there are not that many limits or rigid structures. Ministers can help when a congregant is having personal problems, a safe, confidential resource. They can help leading classes in UUism, providing a center for the congregation, and resolving conflicts within the congregation. But others who had had ministers in their past reported negative experiences or felt badly about how ministers can affect their experience. Too much certainty, too much guidance of the congregation along a narrow or particular path. Maybe they are too driven. Some ministers were accused of maladministration, harassment, and even abuse of their power. Too many had oversized egos, as if they were superior to the members of the congregation. Too many can end up being a mismatch with the congregation. Choosing a minister is a kind of a crapshoot, and you don't always get it right. And cults can form around a minister, kind of dividing the congregation. Several times in our groups, the discussion of therapy and whether or not a minister could be looked to in working out one's personal issues. Some see psychotherapy and spiritual guidance as very different things, but others express the feeling that the two overlap, that therapy is a spiritual as well as a behavioral pursuit. That's food for an entirely separate talk, a very important one. How much does our spiritual life and our psychological life overlap? Are they one and the same, or should they be completely separate? But ministry was also described as simply helping. One member was experiencing a bad emotional moment following a service and remembers someone sitting next to them for 5 minutes without speaking a word, just providing comfort. That's a ministry. Back to the central question that's been posed, is something missing? There was much expression of satisfaction with our congregation and much praise for how we are doing right, for what we are doing right now and how we're doing right now. But there were also some significant examples of what people felt might be missing from where we are and where we've been. So here's a representative list of things members said might be missing. Structure. There may be a lack of structure. Positive inclusion of new members into the community, onto committees. Lacking an encouragement of new members to join in and become a part of the whole. New members can feel left out. They can feel intimidated by longtime and founding members' ownership of the congregation. A spiritual professional's guidance might be lacking. We might be missing someone to assist with conflict resolution. We might be missing classes that train us to neutralize hostilities. We might be missing a strong connection to what one person referred to as the mothership, the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA. And I'll add a strong connection to our regional Pacific Southwest District. I wonder how many of you are familiar with the Pacific Southwest District and this logo. To the best of my knowledge, we do not currently have a designated liaison to our UU district office. These two central bodies representing our faith offer a treasure trove of resources regarding not only the administration of UU congregations, but also ways in which congregations can more deeply pursue our chosen faith. We need to go deeper, some felt, into what one member described as pounding only the 7 principles in UU history. We need to go deeper. We might be missing someone who can lead weddings or funerals. We're missing new blood in many of our committees. They have grown stagnant in some cases. They need new energy, new ideas. Long-standing committees need someone or something to give them an extra push. Some felt we are missing a mediator available to manage conflict within the community. Following the discussion of, is something missing, I would ask the same groups, how would you suggest we fix what's missing? After all, that's what this whole project is about. How to make us better, stronger, more loving, and more caring, more inclusive, a more spiritual community. Here are some of the thoughts and suggestions broken up into categories. First, the category of personal growth. It was said we should keep an organic community approach rather than a fixed approach. We should have more small group discussions. They increase awareness of our needs. We need to teach ourselves to be better at addressing what is missing. We need to encourage people to invest your time and your heart. Once you invest in something, you feel more involved. We should do better at getting more people involved, more religious education. And we need to learn how to get along without having to necessarily agree. And that goes along with improving listening skills and avoiding judgment. When something hurtful is said or done, we need to learn to take a deep breath and then work through it. Others said we need to stay as we are, with the understanding that, quote, solutions can require a little bit of a struggle, but it happens. And that individual prefers it that way. In terms of the small group approach to fixing what's missing, the ideas were to incorporate more small group discussions into our community as a fundamental way of staying strong and on course. Add to already successful men's and women's groups and the Chalice Circle, for example. Assure that groups are diverse, confidential, but not cliques, and that they strive to deepen our spiritual growth. There was significant discussion regarding how the small groups would be assembled and guided. We would benefit from some research on small group behavior to assure positive results. Another approach is the committee approach, I'm going to call it. Let's start with the committees we already have. Have you read our UUCC Operations and Procedures Manual? All of our members to be of standing are all of our members to be of standing committees and what they do. Do all our members understand what committees do and what committees exist? The Worship Committee, the Congregational Life Committee with membership, hospitality, caring, and covenant subcommittees, Religious Education, Social and Environmental Justice, Operations Committee with those 5 subcommittees, and the Nominating and Elections Committee. We need to reinvigorate the Congregational Life Committee. One member said it should be the caring arm, but many of the people who were active on it have left the community, so they haven't been meeting. The committee needs members to step up to chair and reactivate, and keep the good work of the ad hoc We Care Committee by incorporating it into the Congregational Life Committee. The RE Committee, the Religious Education Committee, needs to expand to provide more opportunities to explore our faith and our personal growth. And there's still the possibility of forming a committee on ministry with alternate names like Ministry Circle or others. In general, if we choose to form any kind of new committee, we need to be very careful choosing who will be on it and what its duties will become. That's an important point that was brought up by the congregation. There's a lot more, but my time is limited. I hope you'll not be surprised or disappointed when I say that there's no simple, obvious, single answer to the question, is something missing? As the charts showed, and as the results of our discussions indicate, in perfect UU style, we are of many opinions. But I will suggest 4 paths forward that feel right for our congregation and at the same time achievable. Number 1, take advantage of the committees we already have, which are meant to answer many of the needs members brought up. Invest in them and get members to step up and lead them with vigor. Newer members, please step up. Either share skills and knowledge that you already possess or dive in knowing that you will have the love and support of the congregation. Number 2, design and adopt a program of ongoing small discussion groups in which as many members as possible will participate. Number 3, get district and national UUA ambassadors appointed to actively communicate with our larger faith organizations and the resources they offer. Resources for which we pay significant membership fees. They are there for us if we take advantage of them. And finally, a little more out on a limb, people felt that it would be beneficial for us to consider developing a council, call it an advisory council or a wisdom circle, or even to be clever, a wise council, wisdom, integrity, spirituality, and education. Perhaps 3 people, not members of the UUCC, but selected from the outside speakers who we've come to know, trust and respect, who have come to know us. Stephen Lloyd Moffat would be a prime example. These folks would agree to be available to counsel, advise us as a congregation, and help in conflict resolution. Based on our discussions with these 4 goals, I believe that our lay-led congregation can grow and answer the question I first posed to the board almost 2 years ago. Is something missing? Thank you. Randy, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. Normally at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the slideshow.